which it should do if there is going to be confidence in the whole process of law.
Margaret, what is your attitude to the army now after your experience?
Well, I suppose I would be very bitter towards them. Other than that, my attitude hasn't changed anything to what it was anyway.
Which was what?
Well, I didn't hold them in very high esteem to begin with, and now, as I say, I would probably be very bitter and angry when I meet them.
Well, I don't feel any different. I don't blame the soldiers. I have no bitterness towards the lads that were there. But to the system that has them here, there's no need for them in this country, especially in this part of Ireland. They're sent over here. And they're ordered to. That was a shoot-to-kill policy. They were ordered to do that.
The Carraher family say 2 other sons have since had less than veiled threats from the army.
He was coming from Cullyhanna one evening after dark, driving a tractor, and they put him out of the tractor, and they told him he was next on the list. He was going to get what Fergal got, and they said very nasty things about Fergal, the deceased. But he didn't elaborate, he didn't tell me what they were. He spared me the details.
This was after the shooting?
Yeah.
And by the army?
By the army, the same regiment. And they told them that they knew where there was a white Rover for sale, cheap. That was the Rover, that was the car that was involved.
John Kelly's house is on the southern side of the border, on the road to Dundalk near Hackball's Cross. His complaint against the British Army is about actions in the Republic. His case is being prepared for possible submission to the European Court. John Kelly lived for some years in Crossmaglen. He had a job driving workers across the border from the north to a factory in Dundalk. 3 times he's felt threatened by the British Army. The first time, about a year ago, just in the north, a soldier stopped him and asked him to do paid intelligence work for the British Army. Kelly said he declined. The second time, last spring, again just into the north, the soldiers were far more aggressive. He says one of the soldiers was the one he'd met the first time. This time, in plain clothes, he opened a briefcase full of money. The offer, says Kelly, was £750,000. Kelly says he refused.
He says, if you don't work for us, he says, we'll top you. He says, well, yeah.
We'll top you?
Top you, yes.
Meaning?
Meaning that he'd shoot me when I was. So I told him today, you can shoot away. I'm not working for you or doing anything for you. I have nothing to do with this.
What did they say they wanted you to do?
Intelligent work.
Information on members of the IRA?
That's right.
And had you any information to give them?
None whatsoever.
Why do you think they picked you?
I have no idea. Must be just because I'm living on the border here and I'm going up and down the north collecting people.
So what happened then?
So they had a bit of a confab among themselves, and then one fella says to the other, sure, let him go ahead, he says. And he says, we'll do him what he is. We'll say he drove through a checkpoint.
The third time was December the 14th last, 3/4 of a mile inside the south. Like the last time, it was 6:30 in the morning, the start of his run to pick up the workers. He saw a red light on the road, and from ditches on both sides, Kelly described seeing up to 15 soldiers descend on his car.
One fella in particular, he was hysterical. He came at me with a gun pointing like that, and I'm roaring and shouting to get out of the car. Get out of the car. That's all he kept shouting. And he never stopped until he was above on top of the bonnet of the car, pointing the gun in at my head in the car. So I said that you're in the south. So he still kept going delirious. So I said I had a son with me.
His son Peter got out and went to call the Gardaí, but was grabbed by the soldiers. Meanwhile, John Kelly was struggling with the soldiers as they tried to take him to a van.
They tried to drag me back to the van, and the son also. But there was a fierce struggle on the road, but the son broke away from them. And as soon as the son got away from them, they started to cluster together on the road, and they were still holding on to me, like me down in the ditch. They were still holding on to me. They were still going delirious at this stage. And I kept shouting at them, saying, they're in the south. And they heard about the guards coming, they pulled back. The vans and cars started to reverse back towards the border, and they all started to run back down the road then.
Today Tonight talked to Kelly's son, Peter, who confirmed these events. He talked of being terrified and wouldn't go public. Kelly's solicitor, James McGill, considers the allegations serious.
Oh, they are. They include attempted murder, attempted kidnap, assault, false imprisonment, and a number of firearms offences, given that as the incident took place south of the border, none of the British soldiers concerned would have been entitled to carry firearms.
To his knowledge, does John Kelly have any connections with the Republican movement or the IRA?
All that I can tell you of my client is that he has never been charged with IRA membership. He has no criminal record north or south of the border. He's a family man and works in a local factory, but there's nothing unusual about him of which I'm aware.
John Kelly wrote to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Gerard Collins. Mr. Collins replied, "I have referred the matter to the Anglo-Irish Secretariat in Belfast, and I have asked to be kept fully informed if any further information on this incident comes to light. Foreign Affairs says they've had no response yet from the British side." The Gardaí took statements at the time from John Kelly and his son Peter. After 3 months and 4 times seeking a response, his solicitor got an acknowledgement last week.
I don't know what steps the Gardaí have taken. I would prefer to have been made more fully aware of the steps that have been taken by the Gardaí, because it's a very serious matter, and Mr. Kelly is still in fear of his life. He's in fear of a repeat.
What do you want done?
Well, now I don't want to see them coming into the south for a start and harassing me like that, because I go to my work and mind my own business. And that's all I want.
Without doubt, South Armagh is a complex security area, the border often a treacherous trap for the security forces. But under its own conditions of service, the British Army must act within the law and is subject to the law. The principal voices raised alleging soldiers' abuse of power are those committed to the democratic process.
Any army is a blunt instrument. Soldiers are not trained for police work, and I think one must accept that armies act in a very blunt and sometimes a very offensive way. That is not to say that the authorities here should be writing legislation and writing law in such a way that it is wide open to abuse, because the problem is they're operating under emergency legislation which is so totally open to abuse that it is almost impossible in legal terms to have any redress whatsoever when the legitimate type of complaint is made.
I think if people are treated politely and gently, they are much more likely to be responsive to the Army's presence. One has to remember that the Army have got a very difficult job to do. They're not particularly used to it. I know they're trained, but it's tough for a young soldier to have to go out on those sort of patrols into places where there may very well be hostile attacks, and when he never knows quite what is going to happen next. One's asking a very great deal of the soldiers, that they should at all times be as courteous and polite.
You know, one talks about terrorism. To my mind, the behaviour of the British Army in this incident and in the incidents, the other incidents that I have described, have behaved as terrorists. And I believe that they must be brought to justice.